Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pas fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Each of those examples from foreign authoritarians show a leader jailing a candidate. The idea of jailing a former office holder, like Senator Hillary Clinton, may sound even more extreme. That is exactly what happened. A woman to serve as the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Yulia Tymoshenko, a Putin ally, came to power and had her jailed for 7 years. It was a politically motivated violation of human rights, according to experts. Her daughter said there was no doubt why Tymoshenko was jailed.
Now the regime cannot say that my mother is not a political prisoner.
A new Putin ally comes to power and seeks the prosecution and jailing of his chief rival, the most prominent woman in politics. The sound that you hear is the echo of authoritarianism creeping into the United States. This isn't a hypothetical comparison. Political leaders around the world abuse their legal systems to kneecap opponents because it works. And these campaigns have an intimidating and chilling effect, even if certain plots are not always completed. And that's where we are tonight. That is the international historical context for what is the now widely exposed plot of United States President Donald Trump.
The breaking news tonight, word from the New York Times that the president wanted the Justice Department to prosecute James Comey and Hillary Clinton earlier this year.
A stunning report out tonight says President Trump was poised to order the criminal prosecutions of two of his biggest political adversaries.
He could face a range of consequences, including possible impeachment.
Impeachment. That word is in newscasts tonight because Donald Trump's own lawyers used that word, warning him this plot was not just unconstitutional, not just illegal, not just a crime, but rather right in the strike zone of the kind of high crime that does warrant impeachment. And while some have tried to minimize those Trump campaign changes, remember as rhetoric, lock her up, this new reporting shows Trump was just following up explicitly and directly on his 2016 pledges.
If I win, I am going to instruct my Attorney General to get a special prosecutor to look into your situation.
My Attorney General, I will ask to appoint a special prosecutor. We have to investigate Hillary Clinton, and we have to investigate the investigation.
The candidate was clear. He meant that. It's what he told Clinton. It's what he repeated to his supporters around the nation. The Times report proves that what Trump said before becoming president is exactly what he's trying to do as president. This is documented evidence now.
It's an unequivocal, clear piece of documented evidence that the president does want to mess with law enforcement any way he can.
And whatever one thinks of James Comey, we've criticized some of his actions right here on this show. The reason Comey matters in this whole plot is that he's key to the obstruction probe. In fact, it was Trump's targeting of Comey that led to the entire Mueller probe. Before Trump fired Comey, there was simply a Russian collusion investigation inside the DOJ. Firing Comey raised the stakes because it raised the question of whether Trump was pulling a Nixon and obstructing an open probe, and that firing famously led to Mueller's appointment, and Comey backed up the rationale for that appointment under oath, testifying Trump targeted him to change the Russia probe.
It's my judgment that I was fired because of the Russia investigation. I was fired in some way to change, or the endeavor was to change the way the Russia investigation was being conducted. That is a very big deal.
A very big deal. Firing the FBI director to change a probe can be an element of a crime of obstruction. That is very big. Now, think about where we are tonight, because it is new. Trying to get the FBI director jailed to change a probe is impeachable all on its own. It is very, very, very big. That's what the New York Times has exposed, a single act that is more serious and more criminal than the whole thing that got Mueller appointed in the first place. Let me repeat that, because we all have, understandably, some bombshell story fatigue these days. This story exposes an act by Trump that is more serious and more criminal than the whole thing that got Mueller appointed in the first place. And during Nixon's famed Saturday Night Massacre, many warned that he was trying to do a similar thing, abuse law enforcement to get his way. And there was one Republican senator who spoke to that as an outspoken critic.
The country tonight is in the midst of what may be the most serious constitutional crisis in its history.
The travesty of this whole thing is, of course, that for the people that were trying to obey the law, trying to enforce the law, and now they're the people that are forced out. And that, I think, is the crux of the new crisis, because this brings squarely into focus, are we going to be a government of law?
Are we going to be a government of laws? That was the question, because Nixon tried to abuse the DOJ and turn those powers against his enemies. It ultimately backfired. If an entire special counsel probe was ignited because it appeared Trump was trying to simply change the outcome of the Comey investigation by firing him, imagine the fuller ramifications of this report, with Trump trying to now get people to use the legal system to prosecute Comey and prosecute Clinton. And this is not just something we have foreign examples for, as I mentioned. Donald Trump has also systematically and publicly targeted Comey's deputy, Andy McCabe, and got him ousted from the DOJ. Trump didn't personally do the firing, cutting off his pension days before it was supposed to kick in, which sends a chill through any other public employees, and then now getting a open criminal probe in D.C. into McCabe. We don't know what's happening inside there, where it leads. But the attempted pressure to silence Comey and McCabe, two former top FBI officials, yes, it obviously does send a message to everyone else working behind the scenes about what it means to stand up to Trump. He will come after you. And Donald Trump doesn't just talk trash. He is doing these things. Remember, he talks a lot about the media, but he's also trying to come after them in the same way. This hasn't gotten enough attention, but when he came into office, he promptly asked the FBI to investigate and jail journalists, something we only learned about later after he fired the FBI director, and it came out in, oops, those Comey memos. That same playbook is now being used against Comey himself, and apparently against his deputy McCabe, and yes, against Hillary Clinton. Some civil servants will continue to push back against this and tell him no, tell the president no. That's what the McGahn-friendly leaks argue that McGahn did, although Trump has continued to privately discuss the matter of trying to get Comey and Clinton jailed, according to that same New York Times report. It is not enough tonight to take solace that some of these barriers will automatically continue to hold, or to wax poetically about how we have a strong system and it can't happen here. Remember, that very phrase isn't supposed to be taken literally. It was Sinclair Lewis's famous warning about how a con man populist demagogue could win an election on fear and nationalism and then turn the U.S. towards authoritarianism.
It is Tuesday, the 27th of November of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Just a little smidgen of hot smoked Hungarian paprika or Spanish will make all the difference. Just a smidgen now, less than a dash. You don't need much, though some people love to just shake that stuff on, but be careful. Okay, well, Manafort was caught lying while under that plea agreement. Now, we know what that means. We do, don't we? Mueller has been feeding Manafort weird, fake information. And that got back to Trump. Trump was asked about certain things to catch him in a lie, because it is a perjury trap now, you know. A perjury trap is where you don't tell the truth, and somehow you feel like you've been trapped into not telling the truth. Actually, you were trapped because that's the way you live, and the way you live is wrong. But I think that when Trump last week, or a little bit more than that, started tweeting about the disruption and the chaos inside the Mueller investigation, right around the time we heard that Whitaker took over. Now, Mr. Whitaker may be caught up in this transmission of lies as well. Of course, the acting attorney general, even if you're a fake acting attorney general, is not really supposed to be digging into the special counsel's investigation and then telling really the target of the investigation what the hell is going on. So I think that Mr. Mueller is trapped, all concerned, and there's look, I also keep hearing that there's going to be deals cut where people don't go to jail. Yeah. I will fight for jail time. Because before any of them get sent to The Hague, they have to serve their time here first. Okay, well, what else is going on in the world? Well, let's take a look. Oh, Fox and Friends was busted for giving the script answers, and, well, not the answers necessarily, but to Scott Pruitt when he would appear on Fox, and on Fox and Friends specifically, and they would give him the script so that he could, tailor his remarks accordingly, and they may have even written out his remarks for him because they're so helpful. But they got busted for that, but of course, they're not a news organization. They're the first one to tell you that. Unless being a news organization protects them from oversight. Then they are a news organization. There was a trans woman beaten in ICE custody. And we didn't hear about it for a while, only because of a Freedom of Information Act. But she got no medical treatment until she was hospitalized. That was days later, and then she died of dehydration. Excuse me, but are we really Nazis? Yes, I think we are. And any of us who don't stand up against this atrocity, and all the atrocities that are occurring in this administration, are really just good Germans. Okay? Look it up. And we won't have that. Well, what is going on in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy today? Oh, that was Ari at the top, breaking it down about the criminality of Trump's efforts to prosecute Hillary Clinton and James Comey, and he had a few other people in mind too, like some journalists. We only heard about that he wanted to jail journalists. That was one of the first things he wanted the DOJ to do, but we heard about that because of a Freedom of Information Act as well. So there. But now Ari described it as an echo of authoritarianism creeping into the United States. I got to tell you, it's more than an echo. It's not creeping, and it's been here for a long, long time. And I'm looking at you, Huey Long. And if you wanted to, you could also go all the way back to that jackass Andrew Jackson. Hell, You could even say John Adams with the Alien Sedition Act. This is what we fight against within our own nature. This is what makes us evolved humans rather than, base animals. It is in our nature to either succumb to authoritarianism or to act as an authoritarian. And we made a community pact that we would fight that impulse. That is what makes us Americans. Okay, so on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe, 5 women who were bridesmaids in each other's weddings ran for the Colorado State Senate and flipped the chamber to the Democrats. All 5 of them won. They're all friends. No labels. Mark Penn and Lieberman. Oh, God, won't they just please go away? Well, they spent $2.5 million against a House Democratic majority, and then they lost big. So from that great success, quote, now the group wants a veto on Democratic leadership, especially if they're women over 40. And facing true oversight for the first time since he became president, Trump is lacking lawyers to serve him even before the investigations begin. He's not a good client. You know why? I'll tell you, because his lawyers tell everybody this. He's not a good client because he lies. Okay. After the break, we move then to the chef's table, where the Border Patrol commissioner contradicted Trump's claim that agents were hurt by rock-throwing migrants. And a group of Salvation Army bell ringers were booted from Walmart in Indiana after being outed as white supremacists. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Quite deftly, I might add. And so thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the contribute button. And if you could become a recurring Patreon to Netroots Radio, you would become an integral member in Resistance Radio, because it is your generosity that helps us keep these bills paid. And we are in somewhat of a fund drive now. I apologize that it's during the holidays, but there you go. And if you could, maybe even just buy us a coffee once a month. Just a simple Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Doesn't even have to be a highfalutin blended one, you know. But regardless, any recurring donation through Patreon that you can afford us, we make it go a long way. So thank you very much for your generosity. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom, for taking care of that platform. Boy, that's a lot of work, and he does it. You could follow us on Facebook, too. We're there, and I hate Zuckerberg. Most people do. And I think even Sheryl Sandberg's getting into, evil territory, I think. Regardless, we're there, and a lot of people are there as well, so follow us there. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post a show notes. It's Link's Diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. And you can also follow West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on Twitter at Cookbook West. Of course, we're on Facebook, too. And pick up podcasts of the show by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, YouTube, iHeart, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. This first article here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is by Frank Dale out of Think Progress. This is a great story. This is like the Five Musketeers. These women have been friends for a long time, and they were all bridesmaids in their weddings. And they decided, and it had a lot to do with a guy who's in the Oval Office by the name of Trump. They decided that they had to do something. And they did. And they all won in Colorado. And in the process, now they weren't the only people running for Democratic positions in Colorado state politics. But think of that. A block of 5 all winning. It is quite instrumental in flipping the Senate chamber to the Democrats. Now, of course, votes are still coming in, being counted, and races being finalized as we speak. And we're up to 40 right now in the House, the U.S. House. But I would say even more important than that are state Senate, Assembly, whatever bicameral or even unicameral wins that we can get in state houses is important. And getting some governorships is very important as well. With the census coming up, now, I should add that a couple of these women were already state senators or had been in public office before, but they all decided to run for the state Senate with the express purpose of helping flip it to a Democratic majority. So, things like gerrymandering and simple oversight would occur. Wow. Is that why they call it the democratic process? Josh Israel, also of Think Progress, brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. How much do I hate Mark Penn and Joe Lieberman? Do we ever need to count the ways? Isn't that just a number that is unfathomable? Infinitesimal. Used to be known as astronomical, a number so large we couldn't comprehend it. Now they're saying that instead of using astronomical for a number, we should just use banking. Because those numbers are like so large, no one can comprehend. Speaking of which, a group of so-called centrist donors spent millions to protect some of the most vulnerable House Republicans in the 2018 election, but now they're pushing to dictate the terms of who House Democrats pick to lead their new majority. Now, of course, there are No Labels is a rich super PAC, and it's an outside group funded heavily by a rich Chicago mega donor and his friends. I wonder who they are. So, rich Chicago mega donors. They spent more than $2.5 million to buck up vulnerable House Repugs, but they failed. And now they're going to go with the Blue Dog Democrats to try to muck up the works. And they got Mark Penn and Joe Lieberman helping. Now, No Labels tries to act as if they're nonpartisan. So they did give a little bit of money to Dems. But they're also demanding that Nancy Pelosi or any other candidate for Speaker of the House agree to their Break the Gridlock package. And that's being offered by the Problem Solvers Caucus. Problem Solvers. They always name themselves the things that they never do. Now, according to the No Labels website, 9 Democratic problem solvers have suggested they will withhold their support for Pelosi unless she agrees to their demands. No Labels is actively pushing for more members of the group to use their clout to force the changes through. Regardless of the merits of their ideas, it seems odd that the people who spent millions to deny the Democrats the majority now feel entitled to veto over who will lead it. Well, to me, it doesn't seem odd, because in their mindset, they are the only ones anointed by God to rule, and all of the rest of us are witches, heathens, devils, and certainly not Americans. Willis of Share Blue Media brings us this final offering here at the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Facing true oversight for the first time since he took office, Trump is lacking the lawyers to serve him even before the investigations begin. I think it couldn't have happened to a more evil and onerous person. But it makes sense, doesn't it? Trump has spent nearly 2 years in the presidency without any serious congressional oversight, thanks to Republican control of the legislative branch. Now it looks like Trump is left without enough competent lawyers. Yeah, he's got Rudy, but we're talking competent lawyers here to represent him and his underlings as they face Democratic control of the House and a government that plans to do its job again. Well, I got to tell you, McConnell will have some say about that. Jeez. Now, Politico reports the White House counsel's office has shrunk to merely 25 lawyers on staff and is without a permanent leader since Attorney Don McGahn left the administration in October. Oh, I should mention, Joan McCarter wrote a fabulous diary about this dynamic that has befallen upon Trump and his underlings. So check that out, too, as well, please. Now, a former White House official told the outlet, that being Politico, I don't think anyone who is paying attention thinks they are prepared for a Democratic takeover. Politico notes that some believe the Trump administration needs a staff of 40 to deal with the multiple Democratic investigations set to be launched. Now, Democrats intend to investigate issues including Russian election interference, corrupt cabinet officials, and Trump intermingling of the presidency with his private business, among other matters. We have also, as I mentioned yesterday in reportage, that Democratic leadership is tamping the brakes a bit on investigations. They want to push policy, and maybe investigations will interfere with policy. Though I always remind folks, and especially now, Democratic leadership, wait a second. We're Democrats. We can multitask. We can push for policy. And you can always also do the oversight, which you are mandated to do. Even when the party was warned that top officials like Ivanka Trump and her husband Jared Kushner were conducting government business over private email, a potential violation of the law, the White House did nothing, and neither did the Republicans. They didn't do any oversight. They still don't. Instead of working for the country, GOP members of Congress played interference on behalf of Trump. The free flow of business between the Trump presidency and the Trump organization caused because Trump refused to sell the business or put it into a blind trust is likely to be investigated, especially now that we know, since we've got some tax records, he did not remove himself from when he became the P word. He didn't divest himself. He continued to be the top dog in the Trump organization, making minute decisions about how and where money would go, and it didn't go to charity. He is upset because Mueller's not investigating the other side. Actually, the other side has been investigated by the FBI numerous times. And you know what they found out? The Clinton Global Initiative does God's work. And the Trump organization has been a scam for decades. They always accuse their opponents of what they are doing. All right, let's go on to our break now. And when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world. And I got to tell you, we got some real weather here. And there's even weather from around the world, not to be confused with climate. And we will also finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Steve Mirsky.
InSight has passed through peak deceleration. Telemetry shows the spacecraft saw about 8 Gs.
Marco Alpha and Marco Bravo maintain lock.
Radio Science reports carrier detected.
InSight is now traveling at a velocity of 2,000 meters per second.
The control room of the NASA InSight Mars mission earlier today, as the spacecraft landed on the planet after a voyage of 6 months and 300 million miles. It'll be sending a probe some 5 meters below the Martian surface to measure heat flow and listen for tremors. Most of the talking is by Christine Zalai of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
InSight is now traveling at 1,000 meters per second.
Very close.
Once InSight slows to about 400 meters per second, it will deploy its 12-meter diameter supersonic parachute. The parachute will deploy nominally at about Mach 1.7.
31 seconds pass.
Ground stations are observing signals consistent with parachute deploy. Telemetry shows parachute deployment. Radar powered on. Heat shield separation commanded.
22 seconds pass.
We have radar activation, where the radar is beginning to search for the ground. Once the radar locks on the ground and InSight is about 1 kilometer above the surface, the lander will separate from the backshell and begin terminal descent using its 12 descent engines.
27 seconds pass.
Altitude convergence, the radar has locked on the ground.
Yes.
Standing by for lander separation. Lander separation commanded. Altitude 600 meters. Gravity turn. Altitude 400 meters. 300 meters. 200 meters. 80 meters. 60 meters. 50 meters. Constant velocity. 37 meters. 30 meters. 20 meters, 17 meters, standing by for touchdown.
It won't be until about 8 p.m. Eastern Time today that NASA knows if InSight's solar panels are out and working correctly. They needed to literally wait for the dust to settle from the landing before deploying the panels.
Touchdown confirmed.
For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Steve Mirsky.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser, filling in for your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. As the U.S. population ages, more people are at risk for injuries. The largest percentage of injury-related deaths among this group are caused by falls. Elizabeth Burns is with CDC's National Center for Injury Prevention and Control. She's joining us today to discuss ways to prevent injuries and deaths from falls among senior adults. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Thanks for having me.
Elizabeth, what are some of the more common consequences when a senior adult falls?
Well, first, it's important to note that falls are incredibly common. More than 1 in 4 older adults will fall in a given year. Common consequences include loss of independence and an increased fear of falling, as older adults are afraid to do the same kinds of activities they were doing before. And this can actually lead to more falls, as older adults have less strength in their lower body. Common consequences include hip fracture and traumatic brain injury. And ultimately, in 2016, almost 30,000 older adults died because of a fall.
So are falls more common in men or in women?
Falls are more common in women, and more women go to the emergency department because of a fall, and more women die because of a fall. However, the rate of fall deaths are more common in men than women. What this means is that out of 100,000 men, more will die from a fall than out of 100,000 women.
What are common causes of falls among older people?
Getting on and off the toilet and getting in and out of bed are common causes of falls. Walking around the hallways at night when the lights are off is a common way people fall. There's also an increased amount of medications used in seniors, which have side effects like making them lightheaded, and that increases the risk of falls and is a common cause.
With all of those factors, what are some ways our listeners can decrease their chances of falling?
Older adults should talk to their healthcare provider or doctor about how they can decrease their chances of falling. This can be done during the annual wellness visit or during annual physicals. The doctor will recommend an exercise program that should increase strength and balance, or maybe refer you to a physical therapist. Additionally, they can look through your medications and perhaps reduce your doses or suggest medications that decrease your chances of falls.
Are there things we can do to modify our homes to prevent falling?
Oh, absolutely. Installing grab bars on the side of the toilet, making sure that rugs are taped down or removed, making sure that there's lighting in the hallways are all really simple ways that an older adult can modify their home to prevent falls.
Where can listeners go to get more information about preventing falls?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/study, and that's spelled STEADI.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I've been talking today with Elizabeth Burns about ways to prevent fall-related injuries and deaths among senior adults. Improving strength and agility through regular exercise and removing potential obstacles in the home can help decrease the risk for falls. If you or a loved one is older and struggle with mobility, talk with a healthcare provider about ways to decrease the risks for fall-related injuries and death. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
In a stunning court filing Monday evening, new claims that Paul Manafort violated his plea agreement with the Justice Department by lying to the FBI in Mueller's office. MSNBC's Ali Velshi has more.
In a new filing this evening, Mueller's prosecutors spell out the issue directly, saying that Manafort has breached the cooperation agreement that he signed with Mueller's prosecutors in September by repeatedly lying to federal investigators. From tonight's filing, quote, after signing the plea agreement, Manafort committed federal crimes by lying to the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the special counsel's office on a variety of subject matters. Mueller's team do not spell out in detail exactly what Manafort lied about, but note that they will at some point file a detailed sentencing submission to the probation department and the court, setting forth the nature of the defendant's crimes and lies. Quote, as the defendant has breached the plea agreement, there is no reason to delay his sentencing herein.
Manafort says he doesn't agree with prosecutors' claims that he lied, but both sides now request that the case move immediately to sentencing. In the most far-reaching shakeup since the company emerged from bankruptcy more than 8 years ago, General Motors announced Monday that it will shut down 5 North American factories and cut 15% of its salaried workers, an estimated 14,700 jobs in a major restructuring. GM will stop making sedans, including the Chevy Volt, Impala, and Cruze, and Buick's LaCrosse, to focus on SUVs, hatchbacks, crossovers, and trucks. In classic news dump style, the Trump administration on Friday, yes, the day after Thanksgiving, released the 4th National Climate Assessment, the product of 13 federal agencies with the help of 300 leading scientists. The study delivered a dire warning about climate change and its devastating effects, warning that the economy could lose hundreds of billions of dollars by the end of the century. Of course, Donald Trump says he doesn't believe it.
I've seen it. I've read some of it, and it's fine. Yeah, I don't believe it. No, I don't believe it. And here's the other thing. You're going to have China and Japan and all of Asia and all of these other countries, addresses our country. Right now, we're at the cleanest we've ever been, and that's very important to me. But if we're clean, but every other place on earth is dirty, that's not so good.
Just last week, while touring the devastation left by California's wildfires, Trump claimed great climate was coming.
Does seeing this devastation, though, change your opinion at all on climate change, Mr. President?
No. I have a strong opinion. I want great climate. We're going to have that, and we're going to have forests that are very safe. Because we can't go through this every year. We go through this. So we're going to have safe forests, and that's happening as we speak.
On Fox, Shepard Smith once again told his audience the truth about this very important story.
Heat waves are getting stronger, floods are growing larger, wildfires are obliterating more of America's landscape. It's because of climate change that's largely man-made. Our burning of fossil fuels is damaging planet Earth, and the time to stop it is running out. By the end of the century, climate change could shrink the U.S. economy by hundreds of billions of dollars. That is the warning in a new report released on Friday ahead of schedule by the Trump administration. The government report has found that climate change has doubled the destruction from wildfires in the American Southwest. It warns farmers you could see your crops devastated by droughts and heavy rain in the decades to come. According to this new government report, rising seas and storms could force tens of millions of Americans to move within the next century, and that some coastal cities are already seeing the effects. The report also predicts extreme heat waves will get much worse, and that cities including Phoenix could have blistering triple-digit temps 150 days out of the year by the end of this century. The climate science is accepted science. Governments across the nation are spending billions of dollars preparing for what is to come. The U.S. military, too, billions of dollars. This is not a political issue. It's science. But some have made it political, especially Republicans.
The final U.S. Senate race of the 2018 midterm elections is happening on Tuesday with the runoff between Republican Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith and Democrat Mike Espy in Mississippi. There's still the Georgia Secretary of State race, which will be decided next Tuesday. Meanwhile, Democrats are still picking up seats in the House, with Republican Mia Love conceding to Democrat Ben McAdams in Utah on Monday. There are still 2 House races to be decided. The Democrats are currently leading in both of them. The southern border at San Ysidro is open again after U.S. Customs and Border Protection closed it on Sunday, using tear gas on hundreds of migrants who tried to enter the U.S. illegally. Trump was asked about using tear gas on children when he, as usual, blamed the victims. And finally, Tuesday is Giving Tuesday, a global day of giving fueled by the power of social media and collaboration. This is a good time to support progressive radio, like Progressive Voices. and The Nicole Sandler Show. We need your help to keep our voices alive. So, if you'd like to give, visit NicoleSandler.com/donate or ProgressiveVoices.com/donate to help.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. Russia faced international criticism at the UN on Monday, a day after its military shot at and seized 3 Ukrainian boats passing through the Kerch Strait near Crimea. U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley.
This is no way for a law-abiding, civilized nation to act. Impeding Ukraine's lawful transit through the Kerch Strait is a violation under international law.
The waters of the Kerch Strait at the mouth of the Sea of Azov have been tense after Russia annexed Crimea in 2014 and built a bridge over the strait that linked Crimea with the Russian mainland. Citing a terror threat against that bridge, Russia has been subjecting Ukrainian ships to security checks lately, but blocking or even seizing those boats is a clear escalation, one that Ukraine's UN ambassador claims is part of a plot to take full control over the sea. Agnia Grigas, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, says Russia has long wanted to conquer Ukraine's coastline to make it easier to supply Crimea, and shutting Ukraine out of the Sea of Azov could be a first step in doing that.
If you close off that area economically, I mean, you isolate it and you isolate Mariupol, which has been an important port for Ukraine, then you really cause destabilization and maybe even social unrest in those parts of Ukraine. And then you make that region more vulnerable to a military attack or various forms of subversion.
Ambassador Haley said Russia's aggression would cause reputational harm, but she said nothing of new sanctions, something Grigas worries could embolden Vladimir Putin. It also means Ukraine may have to hope Sunday's incident was a mere misunderstanding and not the start of a Russian escalation. John Jaworski, professor emeritus of political science at the University of Waterloo, isn't sure that's the case.
I would hope that it's an isolated incident, but in the case of Russia, very few things happen by accident.
Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. And I should remind you that the Tarrytown Chowder isn't chock full of just one kind of fish or seafood, but many. All right? Not just fish, but shellfish as well. So if you are allergic to shellfish, don't have the chowder. Just have the conversation. Okay? All right, let's begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley. All right, let's begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit. We are under cloudy conditions. Currently, winds are out of the south-southwest about 2 to 3 miles per hour. We will have nearly the same temperature as yesterday, which was about 55. And we are now in a rainstorm. Yay! We are expected to get another third of an inch. We had about a third of an inch overnight. And now we're going to get another third of an inch all day. And then we are expected to get about a little less than a quarter inch overnight tonight. And then, about another quarter inch tomorrow. And it looks like we may have rain for a few days, a little drying out, and then another really wet cell coming our way, which is nice. All right. So, right now, pollen, of course, is rated as none. Must have been washed from the sky. The air quality index is good at 27. It's in the green, but if you have breathing problems, like my elderly mother does, it's probably not so good. But people are burning the wood in their fireplaces to keep warm. I can't blame them. The daytime UV index is at a low for getting on to winter, and that is rated at 1. I wonder if it'll ever go to 0. I don't think so. But we'll see. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.83 inches. Visibility is down to 2 miles. Clouds are at a ceiling of about 5,000 feet, but it seems lower to me. And the relative humidity is at 97% because there's a lot of water coming out of the sky hitting the ground. My deep-rooted conifers are going to love it, and as well they should. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. All right, data from the weather station at the people just outside of London is 46 degrees with rain. The people with their weather station in Paris, right there at the 7th arrondissement, is 46 and cloudy. Rome is 54 and partly cloudy with a weather advisory that we are checking right now. Potential disruption due to wind. Gusts are coming out of the north at 40 to 60 miles per hour. Yeah. Okay. Steady winds at 15 to 25 miles per hour, and it looks like almost gale force on the gusts, so take care there if you are in Rome. Kiev is 25 degrees and cloudy. Kabul is 49 with a light rain shower. Hong Kong, 64 degrees and cloudy. Tokyo is 53 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 69 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 54 degrees and mostly cloudy with a high surf advisory. And let's see if they give it to me on the... Well, winds are out of the south at 10 to 15 miles per hour. They are getting rain, by the way. And so, yeah, high surf advisory. Take care if you're in the water at Ocean Beach or anywhere. You could get hurt. And it's cold. That water is cold. And it looks also like New York is 45 degrees, mostly cloudy, also with a weather advisory for a gale warning. Winds are out of the northwest and at 10 to 20 miles per hour with gale force winds. So take care in New York. Hold on to your hats. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Noor Al-Sabai brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Now, we do know that this whole photo op of refugees apparently storming the border and putting our military and law enforcement personnel at grave risk was manufactured by Trump and his cronies. And I'm looking at you, Stephen Miller, you bigoted, xenophobic, fascist pig. To rile up Trump's base, apparently. And Trump has been going on the air in his, out there and outside the Rose Garden, his little forays into conversations with the press, and, of course, on Twitter and whatnot, is that the only reason that Border Patrol had to throw and shoot tear gas at these hardened criminals is stone cold criminals, by the way, is because of the rock throwing. And rocks are a bullet, according to Trump, because he has a feel for science. Okay? He does. A pretty good feel for it, according to him. And, but Bloomberg White House reporter Toulouse Olorunipa pointed out the discrepancy on Twitter Monday evening while reporting Trump's comments to the pool. Oh, I see. Not all reporters get to be in the area of Trump now. 3 Border Patrol people yesterday were very badly hurt, getting hit with rocks and stones, Trump said. And the comments were made just after Customs and Border Patrol Commissioner Kevin K. McLeenan issued a statement on the events yesterday in San Diego that gained ample news coverage for the images of migrant parents and children being tear-gassed at the border. Yesterday, U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents and officers in San Diego effectively managed an extremely dangerous situation involving over 1,000 individuals who sought to enter the U.S. unlawfully in large groups. They did so safely and without any reported serious injuries on either side of the border, he noted, a statement that contradicts Trump's claims. Now, let's be clear, even with what this commissioner is saying. They were not entering the border or the United States illegally. They were at a legal port of entry, and it only became an illegal port of entry because Trump tweeted it. Let's be clear.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Tana Ganeva, also of Raw Story, brings us this final offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. You know, have you noticed the white supremacists have gotten, they're like slackers now. I mean, I remember the good old days when they would like knock over an armored car or two, you know, hold up a bank. Now it looks like in Indiana, they'll just fake like they're good old Christians for the Salvation Army, ringing a bell. Well, Indiana residents were horrified over the holiday weekend when a photograph of white supremacists ringing bells for the Salvation Army appeared on social media. In the Facebook post, which has since been taken down, the members of the Hells Angels Northwest Indiana Region Motorcycle Club could be seen brandishing patches that read Aryan and White Aryan Resistance. Oh, well, now they're not a gang, they're a club. A representative of the Walmart where they were trying to collect donations said that they were asked to leave after customers complained. As soon as this was brought to our attention, we asked the Salvation Army bell ringers to leave. We made the Salvation Army aware, and they apologized. The Salvation Army is responsible for screening its volunteers stationed outside our stores. We've had a long history of supporting the Salvation Army and regret this isolated incident. We will direct further questions to the Salvation Army. Let's see, after the post went viral, a woman who had accompanied the man tried to change the discussion. That's profiling bullshit we all have to deal with all the time. You're no better than anybody else. What you all are doing is a form of bullying and profiling. Well, let me kick your ass while they steal your money and pimp out your data because we're Hells Angels. Okay, well, of course, Salvation Army says that their commitment to non-discrimination includes a dress code for bell ringers requiring they wear the red Salvation Army aprons. They make it clear that no symbol, marking, or lettering that is viewed as discrimination. You know, like being a Nazi. Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But Netroots Radio, of course, will broadcast on all day and all night. We'll visit with you tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll visit with you right here tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.